Well, welcome back. Friday, April 24th, 2026. I am Seth Leibsohn. We're coming to you from the YRefi.com studios. It's a delight to have, as we do almost every Friday, political consultant extraordinaire George Khalaf, Khalaf. I spell it so you can also go to his website, georgekhalaf.com, as he is also a candidate for Arizona State House of Representatives in Legislative District 3. George, good to see you, man.
Good seeing you.
Thanks. You saw me have a rough start. I'll tell you, the very funny thing, Mr. Bill will remember it. Somewhere we have it on a recording. The very first day I had a show, debuted my own show here, the very first day I had the worst case of hiccups. And it was so funny. The whole show sounded like I was doing a live broadcast from SeaWorld or something.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Something. You saw me have a rough voice moment a minute ago. These are the
it happens.
These are the behind-the-scenes little problems you sometimes get after a week of speaking. How's the campaign going?
It's going well. It is going well. It really, I know I've said multiple times when we're together about how I'm enjoying it. I'm getting to talk to folks, but now I'm starting to really pepper in some additional, like what I would consider non-political events, meaning pancake breakfast with the Kiwanis Club and Carefree, or coffee with the Cop and Cave Creek Carefree and things like that. And, I think the thing that I love the most is when people are kind of surprised to see me, that they don't typically have tons of interaction with electeds outside of their local city council folks. Mm-hmm. And so that's been really cool to meet people in places like that, or have someone randomly stop me at a Target or what have you. So
showing up is such a big deal.
It is.
You advise your candidates that you consult for to, just be there.
Show up, be there, be accessible. And look, the true test is going to be, let's talk in 2 years. And what I tell folks is, look, I am confident not only when we talk in 2 years that I'm going to have voted well and I'm going to have made you proud, but that I am going to have continued to be present. This is not just I'm showing up here because I want something from you. Often I actually don't have any asks from our folks. Like, look, I make an ask of someone who I'm close with, but the ask is just give me some of your time. And people have been so gracious. And I think people are refreshed to hear about my vision for the state, to understand that I'm a conservative and I'm going to fight boldly and continue to communicate it well, but also do it in a way that isn't just inherently, like I said, I often use this phrase, I don't just like send nuclear bombs in the way that I talk. So
I like when you put it that I'm a conservative, because usually, and I'll do this at the end of the show with you, I think, if we can be reminded to do so, is the why you're a conservative, because I love when you launch into that. I was talking with someone last night about some of the differences between this network and perhaps other networks that are out there, if there are other networks that are out there. In theory, they tell people to be conservative. We try to tell them why. And your why is a wonderful one, why you're a conservative. And we'll get into that in a little bit. We'll just use that as a tease and put a bookmark on that for a moment, George. If I can, I want to talk to you about some other political news of the week. First of all, take us back a week. You were at the Trump rally, yes?
I was.
How was
that? I thought it was great. I think the president, look, the president's on his best when he goes a slight bit off script, but does it in a very funny way. And he, I think, did a very good version of that. It was not like a 2-hour speech. It was about like an hour 25, hour 30, if I remember correctly. Very good feedback from the audience. And look, one of the things that I loved, and the president pointed out, and again, I get that this is the point of turning point action, but it was a disproportionately young audience. And when you go to a lot of events, not that I have any problem with anyone going to an event of any age, but I love to see high school, college, men and women there on fire for their values. So much talk about faith. Yeah. I think just did a really good job of highlighting our conservative the conservative candidates, but I thought the president did a very good job.
Have you ever seen a politician that can read the room better than Donald Trump? I've never been in a room with him, but from what I can see and what I can tell, he can read the room better than anyone.
He has a number of skills like that I think are unlike really any other elected official. And he just has a way of reading the room, of selling things, of connecting. Even when you've never met him, I've never had the honor yet to meet him or to shake his hand, but you feel connected. I mean, and again, then he'll give you shout outs. He was speaking a lot about foreign policy and affordability and different things, but then he used the phrase, folks that have listened any amount of time, I'm Lebanese. I was born in Lebanon. and he was talking about making Lebanon great again, and spent a couple of minutes about that. And like, look, there's no surprise that in the lead up to the election, for example, in 2024, we couldn't hand out enough hats and shirts at a Lebanese event that I was at, a Middle Eastern event. People were on fire for him, and this is why. And so, we started off talking a little bit about this, and I'll kind of end my analysis on this. He just continues to be a reminder of a great example of an elected official who made commitments and has followed through.
Yeah.
Even for those, and I tell people, even if you didn't like some of the commitments he made commitments and he's followed through, and people like that. People want more of that.
You took me and some others to a Lebanese event, a Lebanese American event 2 years ago, I think it was, and there was a lot of Trump regalia.
Yes,
there.
yeah, that was the year, yeah.
And it struck me. Oh, I guess it was election year, and it struck me that expatriates from a country that goes down, falls apart, collapses, based on being taken over by outside or tyrannical forces, is naturally going to want to sidle up to someone who believes in a strong America and backing up its allies. They're not going to want to back someone who doesn't give a damn about their own country, who has a down market view of standing up for America, because I think people know that what Ronald Reagan said as far back as 1964, this is the last stand on earth, no matter where you're from.
Of course, and especially if you're a Lebanese Christian who had to leave, who was essentially forced into exile. There's no group of people that love the United States of America more than those who had to flee their place of birth because of religious persecution. Whether you're an Armenian Christian, a Lebanese Christian, Christians from all over the Middle East, now from the stories that are coming out of Africa, it's a big deal, and you understand the hope and the light that America represents. And again, I know the media loves to talk about how Western Europe doesn't love America. Well, I don't really care about Western Europe's opinion, frankly. Let's go ask the people in parts of the world where they don't take the United States of America for granted. They don't take the symbol that flag represents for granted, and then come talk to me.
And Western Europe's in the midst of destroying itself anyway. I don't even know that there is a Western Europe per se anymore. I mean, you think about the differences between some of these countries that constitute the so-called area of Western Europe or mass of Western Europe. I don't know what they have in common with each other. I don't know why it is seen as a thing. What does what does Macron have in common with Meloni?
Honestly,
little.
Nothing. I mean, what does France even in the average sort of Italian and French? Now, there are people in France rising up, but you're right. I mean, the woke progressive thought has much more in common with each other, whether you're in Canada, whether you're in Western Europe, or frankly, Eastern Europe, really anywhere in the world. You have much more in common, Australia, than you do with those that are taking that righteous stand, which Meloni is a great example of a leader that's doing that. And you see the insurgents in other countries that are doing it and are rising in the polls. Why? Because people want someone and something to believe in.
Yeah.
And they're doing their own version of, quote unquote, Donald Trump and what the president gave us here with MAGA and America First.
You can have pride in your country and protecting of its culture. You can have nihilism and destroy it. And all the great scholars will point to the fact that the beginning of the destruction of a regime, a republic, a country, is the loss of the confidence and understanding of its own founding values.
And I know we don't have a ton of time before the break, but maybe we can pick up on this. And I was just thinking about this. I think maybe we'd be hard pressed to find a country that, or the average citizen in that country likes America when they are not proud of their country versus countries that are proud of their identity. Right. They have such an allegiance to America because they also have an allegiance to the pride that Americans have versus talking crap about it like how some Western Europeans or Canadians do. But they have a low regard, if you really think about it, of their countries. And so that's something I think that is very interesting to understand of this Judeo-Christian also connection as well with these
and the dissident movements that are rising up or rise up from time to time against their tyrants. They're always asking, where's America? Where's the president? Or they march with papier-mâché statues of liberty or emblemology of the Declaration of Independence, right? there is something different about this place and special about this place that even if too many here don't know it, the oppressed abroad certainly do.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. Let's not take that for granted. I am Seth Leibsohn. He is George Khalaf, and you can go to his website, georgekhalaf.com. George is George, and Khalaf is Khalaf. georgekhalaf.com. You can learn more about him, but help him out in his campaign to represent Arizona in the State House of Representatives. It's a huge upgrade to have George representing us in the State House, and we look forward to his election victory, but we can't take it for granted. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Seth Leibsohn Show, coming to you from the YRefi.com studios. Did you hear that song last week?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you know it.
Did he do his dance?
Yes, he did. Not for a long time, but he did. He was
gives the audience what they want.
His signature self. It was great.
George Khalaf is my guest, candidate for State House of Representatives in Legislative District 3 and a political consultant. Stay on Make Lebanon Great Again a moment longer. Because he said that, right?
Yeah.
MLGA. Sounds like a weight loss. Are you on MLGA 1? There's versions of that he has spoken of. Lately, you've heard Make Iran Great Again, Mira, and other countries. Some people resent that. I don't. I get it. It seems to me that if you appreciate or love freedom, as Lincoln said, in giving freedom to the slave, we guarantee freedom to the free. It seems to me that to the degree we can help anyone achieve their freedom or overcome their tyranny, it is in America's interests. It's in America's interests to have freedom be the theme, or as much of the theme of the universe as possible, rather than oppression. And certainly we know that failed states often attack America and her allies. This, to me, is no division from Make America Great Again, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
I agree, and let me give you sort of my nuanced take. I think the president has found a way to do foreign policy that does put America first. What I mean by that is this. He's not saying that by making, to make Lebanon great again or insert whatever country, he's just handing out a bunch of cash and saying, yeah, from now until the rest of time, we're writing you a blank check. We're going to take care of you in the way that, frankly, NATO used to look at us. And, of course, the average American is resentful of that, as am I, because it's not our job to protect you. We can advance freedom. We have to do it in the right way, though. And so I think what the president has done is say, look, there's a case to be made that to protect freedom, America has to take a stand globally, but we have to do it in the right way. We have to put the interests of America first. And again, I think this is the part that kind of blows my mind. How is that not the job of a politician in the United States of America to put their country first, right? Why is that a bad thing? I mean, the left is painting it as some...
Not a single Democrat would stand up for that at the State of the
Right,
Union.
because it's like some blasphemous thing that we're putting America first. I don't understand. I'm going to be an elected official in Legislative District 3 and representing Arizona. Am I not supposed to put the interests of
you
my
will be swearing
first?
on a constitution that will be the constitution of the state and the country.
Right? I mean, of course I'm going to put the interests first. I'm not going to put the interests of Lebanon before America or any other country. America's interest is first. For me, at the legislative level, Arizona's interest is first. And even more specifically, Legislative District 3's interests are first. Right? And so I think the president's found a way to do that. Again, there are some people on the Republican side that still don't love the way that he has maneuvered it. I want to be talking more about domestic policy. I don't disagree, but I think he has found a way to do it well without writing these blank checks and with pushing back against the United Nations and NATO and others that frankly have taken advantage of the United States, and the people are sick of it.
I'm totally on board with what you're saying. And let me bring it back to another thing you said about the rally from last week, which is you said how inspired you were to see so many young adults there, and that there were a lot of young adults there. Because we keep reading and hearing from the media, I think based on little polling, though, and you would know, that the young coalition of the Trump movement is increasingly disaffected. I don't know that to be true. I know people say it. I don't know it to be true.
So this is part of the problem, and I don't know, maybe this is crazy coming from the mouth of a guy who does survey research partly for a living. part of the problem, Seth, and why people are skeptical, why I'm skeptical, is polling said horrific things in the lead up to 2024. Right. Polling said horrific things in the lead up to 2016. And polling said horrific things in the lead up to 2020. Right? A lot of that was not true. So part of the problem is also we have to remember that politics is not static, but polling is, meaning you get a flashpoint in time. So if right now people are upset, people don't have to remember too far. There's been a lot of I've talked a couple times this week about the 2006 election. For anyone that remembers, remember how catastrophic that election was for Republicans?
I certainly do.
In the months afterwards, there were front cover magazine articles, I think it was from Time, saying that the Republican Party is the Republican Party doomed and or professing the doom of the Republican Party.
Right.
And then in 2012, people remember what happened. Oh my gosh, that one for sure. People said that's it. Mitt Romney lost by larger margin than John McCain after we came off of 8 years of Bush. Holy smokes, Republican Party is never going to see the light of day. What happened 4 years later? Donald Trump came on the scene, punched them all in the face, figuratively, and won. And look at now where the Republican Party's at, not just in Arizona and around the country. So I say all this to say there is some polling that shows that there's some slippage with young voters or slippage with this or slippage with that. That's in this present moment. We've got months left until Election Day, and we as Republicans are going to fight back in terms of the narrative, in terms of talking to these voters, and there's a lot of room and time for things to kind of play out.
Well, that is a good segue to something I wanted to ask you about that's been getting a lot of play locally. There was a professor, a local professor who was on an interview. I think you saw it. Maybe you sent it to me.
Yeah.
You did send it to me, talking about how Trump is losing support from Hispanic Americans. Funny thing about that interview was she talked about how he did okay or did well with, I forget the exact verbiage she used. He did well but not overwhelmingly well with Hispanic voters in the election. Let's just put a full stop on that and say this quite clearly. No Republican in history ever got a higher percentage of Hispanic votes than Donald Trump.
Of course. I mean,
start with that.
It's in her interest to paint it. She said something that was not surprising.
Okay.
That was not surprising that he did as well as he did, but it wasn't anything that was great or amazing. It was just like so-so, and she was like trying to couch. I mean, the entire interview was very odd. My big takeaway from it was this. There continues to be a complete misunderstanding by many on the progressive left as to why President Trump is doing better with those who were originally born somewhere else. And the Hispanic audience is obviously the largest in the United States of America in that. Because President Trump treats them as people, not as a voting bloc. President Trump was there and met with them and engaged them and is speaking truth when the progressive left is not. President Trump is talking about no-brainer things. One of the highlights of the rally on Friday was him talking about, had I said 15 years ago that men don't play in women's sports, they would have been like, why is the speaker talking about crazy stuff? That is why we're talking about today. And why that is what we're talking about today. Why are we talking about that today? Because of the progressive left. The average Hispanic voter that attends church, and even if they don't attend church, they don't want to talk about transgender this and that and gender ideology, all these things that the progressive left wants them to talk to. And then, of course, to cap it all off, there was the affordability issue. Yeah. And so Democrats need to be reminded of that. And yes, some polling now have shown that the president is doing worse with Hispanic voters. Well, the president's not on the ballot right now. And we need to continue leaning in and engaging the community. Just because we win a high percentage, that doesn't mean we leave alone. But to diminish it or detract from it is only a ploy from the progressive left to distract from the fact that Hispanic voters they are farther apart from the average Democratic voter on so many issues across the spectrum than they ever have been, and that's what they're trying to distract away from.
I totally agree. All I think we should want, if we want to tick those numbers up again, is let Democrats talk about what they like to talk about the most, and any voting bloc would naturally say, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy." There's a clip that you can get online of about 10 years ago, Dennis Prager on the Bill Maher show talking about whose party's crazier, and Bill said, "Give me an example of ours," and he said, "Okay, how about that men can menstruate?" And Bill was blown away that this was a thing. And then he found out it was becoming a thing, and it became very offensive to Bill Maher. But just remind them of that kind of thing. Have Kamala Harris speak her fake accent just a little bit more and see where these poll numbers go. George Khalaf is my guest. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Seth Leibsohn Show. With the heat coming, I want you to know about Klein Heating and Cooling. Klein Heating and Cooling has all your solutions, flat rate pricing, no surprise upcharges. They do residential, they do commercial. They install Trane, Ruud, Carrier, other HVAC units. They will service all makes. At Klein, you will be offered a free in-home comprehensive analysis so you get the right solution at the right place, at the right price, without any upselling or the intention to sell you a new system when you don't actually need one. No job too big or too small. Check them out online, kleinheatingcooling.com. Klein is Klein, kleinheatingcooling.com. George, just this point about authenticity that you were making about Donald Trump and that I said something about on the way to the break. Let the Democrats speak freely and openly from their hearts. Let Gavin Newsom's wife talk. Let Elizabeth Warren talk. Let Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar talk, and I think whatever voting bloc has a slightly lower number for Donald Trump than it might have a year ago will be reminded, and those numbers will go up. I was amazed that Kamala Harris is back to the fake accent. I don't know if you heard this week a little audio from a talk she was giving earlier in the week.
I think it's okay for us to be a bit transactional too, and to say I'm gonna get mine also. And so don't count on me to be a voter and be the backbone of the Democratic Party, because it is my value system and my ethics and my sense of civic duty and responsibility.
Now, some will say, I'm not sure if that's pills or alcohol, but it's inauthenticity when, as an African-American woman, you have to fake a black accent. And the difference between the authentic of Donald Trump and this explains an awful lot in our politics, doesn't it?
Of course it does. Of course it does. But, I mean, Seth, I really almost get so tired. I can't put it into words. The fighting and the thought process that somehow we as Republicans are more inauthentic. And I can't even fathom it in a week. And I want to spend sort of more time on this in a week where Democrats passed arguably the worst gerrymander, maybe not aesthetically, because Illinois is worse, but the worst gerrymander relative to the percentages in a state than they've ever passed in Virginia, led by individuals that literally months ago were bemoaning gerrymandering and doing it to save democracy. And they can say all those things at once, literally just lie, of course be inauthentic, and then blame it on Donald Trump that like he picked the fight. Like that's supposed to justify a state that's at best a swing, 55-45 that now has a 10-1 Dem to Republican delegation. It's unconscionable, and of course it's inauthentic. And you could say whatever it is that you want about Donald Trump. Yeah. Saying anything remotely that he is inauthentic is a total load of crap. Yeah. And I'm not just saying that because I'm comparing it to Democrats that are rank and file inauthentic, because he's genuinely authentic, which is what, frankly, makes some people upset, but why so many voters, including a majority of the popular vote this last election, why they voted for him. Yeah,
I think they got tired of the grift. I think they got tired of the ideological direction, port side, and I think they had a sense of who's real and who's not. Let's do the gerrymandering thing in Virginia for just a moment, though, a moment longer if we can, and then I want to get to some of the other news of the week. There's this graph going around. Massachusetts has 36% Republican registration and 0 seats in the House of Representatives. Connecticut, 42 and 0. Maine, 46 and 0. I could go down the list. There's not a single New England state with a single Republican member in the House of Representatives.
Seth, I know. And then they were like, well, Donald Trump started it with Texas. No. You started it with Illinois. Right. You started it with Maine. You started it with Massachusetts, with Connecticut, with Delaware. It really does get me fired up. And then it gets me even more fired up. And I really have not talked a lot about this because we already have so many things to talk about in Arizona. I'm not going to get into the middle of what's happening in Indiana. But frankly, it is then beyond frustrating when Republicans respond with what? With nothing. Right. With nothing. And I get it. I understand. I'm not saying that we should gerrymander ourselves, but we have to fight back against this ridiculousness. And at a minimum, we have to stand up and stop them from doing it in Virginia. And now the hand-wringing has started and continues to happen in Virginia of like, well, whose fault is it? It doesn't matter whose fault is it. The problem is that it happened. And now we're going to lose 4 seats in a state that we had no business losing that fight against. And we got outspent 1,000,000 to 1. Yeah. And what's our, of course our voters are going to be frustrated because our response is, well, okay, but we have to be nice. No, that's not the point. We can be nice and stand up against them.
The fighting side of George Khalaf. I love it.
Holy smokes. I really get super worked up about this stuff.
We may have a song about that when we come back. George Khalaf is our guest. We'll be right back. Little Merle Haggard, the fighting side of me. We saw the fighting side of George Khalaf a moment ago. I am Seth Leibsohn, coming to you from the YRefi.com studios. Why Refi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. And why Refi does not care about what your credit score is. So if your private student loan debt seems out of control, if it's keeping you up at night, if it's ruining your life, it doesn't have to. Give YRefi a call, 888-YRefi-85, or check them out online at yrefi.com. George Khalaf is my guest. There was something I wanted to talk to you about, another piece of grift that I think might be one of the biggest news stories of the year, actually, George, because it affected so much. I'm talking about the indictment of the Southern Poverty Law Center. People will remember, I've been playing this audio all week, not to make people sick, but just to hammer home the point. Joe Biden's whole narrative for running for the presidency, for coming out of retirement to run for the presidency in 2020, was the only 5 sentences he could commit to memory, and that we heard ad infinitum.
I ran for president in 2020 because of what I saw in Charlottesville in August of 2017. Extremists coming out of the woods, carrying torches, their veins bulging.
Everyone knows that quote because he couldn't stop using it and citing it as the reason he ran for president. What we have now come to learn through a multi-count indictment against the Southern Poverty Law Center is they helped pay for that. They helped coordinate that riot and so many other instances of white supremacy, including to the KKK, funding the parts and elements of the KKK, so that we could be browbeaten as a movement and as a country for years upon years with the notion that white supremacy was the greatest threat to this country, when the organization that billed itself as fighting it was the one that was supplying it.
Seth, I think history is going to show that in maybe the last 100 years, if not more, of this nation, the Democratic Party, and more specifically the progressive base of the Democratic Party, has done more to dismantle every key institution and trust that the American people have with every key institution more than anyone else. Meaning, during COVID, they have caused an entire swath of people to distrust medicine and healthcare because they freaking lied and their leaders lied. And now this and the Russia hoax. And I mean, the
Biden laptop, right?
The list goes on and on and on. They have destroyed everything. But if you think about it, we shouldn't be surprised, because that is at the base of the progressive ideology, is to destroy the institution and put what in its place, and to destroy connections to others, to put government in its place so that they can have a true socialist regime. And I'm tired of hearing people say that, well, no, the Republican Party's done this and that. No human is perfect, because obviously as a Christian, you inherently believe that people are fallen. But the Democratic Party as an institution have destroyed the average American's trust in so many things that even something like this now, again, why would the average person ever believe again that there is someone who, I'm not saying someone who's racist, but well, when you have manufactured,
right. This was another point of Dennis Prager's for years. Why is it turns out that some of these most famous examples of white supremacy turn out to be hoaxes? Larry Elder would make the point. This is Jussie Smollett all over again, except Jussie Smollett funded his own hoax as opposed to donors funding the Southern Poverty Law Center and these hoaxes. But Larry Elder likes to make the point that if white supremacy were such a big deal in this country, why does it have to be invented and created? He would make the point that the demand for it in no way meets the supply for it. There is a demand for it. It's the Democratic Party. They want us to be thought of as a racist movement and a racist country. When you look at most of the big examples that they ever bring forward, and this may be one of the biggest, it turns out it's not even true.
You know, because it's much harder for them, if not, frankly, impossible, for them to actually fight against the Republican ideals on fair grounds.
Right.
Because, as I always like to remind people, we know where our truth comes from. Our truth is not manufactured. Our truth is eternal. It comes from God, and they can't fight against it. And so what they have to do is make things up. Yeah. And they have to manufacture and call us all racists and bigots and this and that and the other. But the problem is that even voters that had voted with them for years and years have seen through. So then what is their plan? We see it all the time now. What's the plan? What is Katie Hobbs running on? What are National Democrats running on? This is like the gift that
she
keeps
said
on
we
giving.
were a party of white supremacy, by the way. Yeah.
They're running on that. They're running on just hatred of Donald Trump.
Right.
What are you going to run on that for the next 10, 20 years? I mean, what is your vision for the future of this country? How far have they come from the hope and change, even though Barack Obama did more to destroy the country than maybe any other Democratic president in the last 50 years, but at least he was pretending to sound like he was trying to move us forward?
This is a huge problem for the Democratic Party because I think half the donors are asking that question of your Katie Hobbs types. Really, this is what you're going to carry for the next 10 years. But I think half the others have reconciled themselves to the point that, okay, there is another ideology out there and there is a program, and it's called the Democratic Socialists of America, and that has swept through the Democratic Party. And either the Democratic Party embraces it or doesn't know how to deal with it or get rid of it. Hassan Piker got a beautiful, long, glowing interview in the New York Times today. He is to the Marxist left further than Nick Fuentes is to the Nazi right, and he has been embraced by the Democratic Party. This is your new Democratic Party.
Yeah,
George.
Their nominee in Maine, their nominee in Michigan.
Yes.
They just appointed a pro-Hezbollah. Hassan Nasrallah is a martyr.
The
Board
Democratic
of
Senate candidate in Michigan will be a Hassan Piker sympathizing terrorist sympathizer.
It is absolutely wild. And then again, what's our response as the Republican Party? Responding graciously means what? Responding graciously means that we boldly proclaim the truth, but we have to do it from conviction. It is not okay. It's never been okay, but it's definitely not okay today for our voters, or frankly for common sense, to respond to these things by saying, oh, okay, well, you know, this is no good, but we're going to kind of stay in our corner. No, we have to point
fight
it out.
The ideological war.
We have to fight it. We have to point it out. And you know what we have to do? We have to proclaim our truth, even if it makes us uncomfortable.
Doesn't make me uncomfortable.
And let it sit out there.
It doesn't make me uncomfortable. I think for too long the Republican Party has been uncomfortable with or uneducated in ideology, political philosophy and ideology, and we need it now more than ever because we are up against one. We're up against Marxism right now, and the Republican Party has been caught flat-footed and doesn't know how to address it. We do it here all the time. You know it, and you do it all the time. But if we can inject that education into more elements of the Republican Party, it needs to be made to understand that it is no longer two parties of differing in opinions in this country. It is not a Republican Party and a Democratic Party that have different opinions. It is a Republican Party and a Democratic Party that have different principles. One principle is what you said, based on the Declaration of Independence and self-evident truths and universal civil rights, and one is now based on Marxism, and these are two competing principles. This is not Republicans. This is not Nixon Kennedy anymore. We're not in that world anymore.
Amen. Preach it.
Well, I'm going to have you preach when we come right back. George Khalaf is my guest, and he's going to tell us not that he is a conservative, but why. Gold and silver are in the news a lot because people are looking to protect their wealth with real, tangible, and hard assets that are also easy to liquidate. So if you're thinking about gold and silver, think about CMI. Gold and silver. I've been recommending and endorsing them for a while now, and I am proud to do so. I highly recommend them for the low premiums and high customer service. Love that family. Founded 1973, still owned by the same family, still headquartered in Arizona, and now the nation's oldest precious metals firm. CMIGS.com. I've been friends with you and endorsing you, George Khalaf, for a while now, and I'm proud to do so. You said at the beginning of this show, I am a conservative. I said, hold that thought, because at the end of the show, I want you to tell us not that you are, but why you are.
When you're born a Lebanese Christian and you come from a family whose uncle died at 19, as my uncle did, saving laying down cover fire for Christian villagers to escape. When you have parents who nearly sacrificed their lives multiple times. I have a mom who stood up after her older brother died to fight for the cause, for her faith. I have a father who died nearly 3 or 4 times during the war, he's going to school in Beirut and would often go to where he was from to fight on the front lines against the Islamist terrorists after his family was kicked out by them. When you have parents who, even after the Lebanese Civil War, would run through shrubbery to be able to get to the political rallies. This is how I grew up. And then when we came to the United States of America legally in 1996, and my mom would tear up every single time she heard God Bless America or America the Beautiful or any patriotic song. She was more patriotic than anyone that I knew growing up. Why? Because she understood. She has so much fight and heart and pride for her beliefs and for her faith, and now for her home, the United States of America. And you grow up in a home like that and you get enamored with politics. Why? Because of the opportunity they can bring. I don't look at the negative side of it. I do look at the positive side, the hope and the vision that we could cast, and that government is meant to get out of the way of its people to prosper, but that we are meant to be voices of the people. That is my why, and why I am leading with my faith, and I'm leading with the fact that I'm a Christian, and I've gotten positive response even from those who are not Christian. Why? Because they can at least understand and say, you know what, I understand where George, how he's thinking, where he's coming from, what his why is, and that has been lost often in American politics, in politics in the United States of America, in Arizona. And I am proud to be not just running this way, I will lead this way, I will legislate this way, I will come alongside others to do it. And I've spent my career speaking to Republicans across our state, talking about these key issues. And you can hear it in my voice when I talk about it. There's nothing that makes me more proud than my faith, my country, my family, and I would be my honor to represent the people of Legislative District 3 and fight on behalf of Arizonans, because we have to do what's right, and our values are too important, and the truth is too important to leave it in anyone else's hands and to leave it up to chance.
GeorgeKhalaf.com. I'm not going to even attempt to improve on that. Thank you, George. We'll be right back.